In a landmark decision that underscores the deep-seated tensions within American electoral practices, a federal court in Pennsylvania has ruled that the disqualification of absentee ballots due to dating errors violates the United States Constitution. Constitution. This ruling marks a significant setback for Republican efforts to undermine the voting process through technicalities, raising profound questions about voter disenfranchisement and the future of free and fair elections. For years, legal observers and political analysts have noted the persistent tug-of-war in Pennsylvania over the treatment of absentee ballots. The crux of the matter lies in ballots that, while submitted by duly registered voters and reflecting a single candidate choice, have been invalidated due to either the omission of a date or the inclusion of an incorrect date on the outer envelope. In the 2022 election, more than 10,000 such ballots were rejected. The figure for the 2024 cycle, while not definitively tallied, stands at a minimum of 5,000 ballots thrown out on the basis of these technical flaws. This controversy centers on a seemingly minor administrative detail that, in practice, has significant consequences. The practice of requiring a specific date next to the voter's signature on the ballot envelope appears to serve no practical purpose. Given that the postmark itself reliably indicates the time of mailing, the additional demand for an accurately placed date is in effect an unnecessary barrier. Critics argue that this requirement is nothing more than a pretext designed to facilitate the systematic disqualification of votes, particularly in states like Pennsylvania, where the mail-in ballot system predominantly benefits Democratic voters. The federal court's decision emphatically stated that the disqualification of these ballots, despite their otherwise lawful nature, constitutes a violation of the constitutional right to vote. By nullifying votes on a technicality that bears no substantive relevance to the integrity of the election process, the ruling underscores that such practices are fundamentally flawed. As one legal expert pointed out during the proceedings, the requirement to affix a date next to a signature is nothing more than an arbitrary trap that targets voters who are otherwise in full compliance with voting laws. The legal strategy advanced by the Republican National Committee, RNC, in this case was both creative and deeply concerning. According to their argument, the act of dating the envelope was intended to instill a sense of solemnity in the voting process. Proponents of this view maintained that by mandating a date, the voter is compelled to recognize the gravity and sanctity of the electoral process. However, this rationale has been widely criticized as pretextual and lacking in substantive merit. In fact, no credible evidence has been presented to demonstrate that such a requirement actually enhances the solemnity or integrity of vote. The federal judge's dismissal of this argument highlights the broader issue, that the real motive behind the requirement is to disenfranchise voters in critical swing states. This ruling is not an isolated incident, but rather part of a broader pattern of voter suppression tactics that have been observed across several key battleground states. In Pennsylvania, the case of the absentee ballot is but one facet of a larger strategy. Previously, similar measures were employed, such as the controversial handling of so-called naked ballots, wherein ballots were discarded due to the absence of a required inner envelope. More recently, in North Carolina, there have been attempts to invalidate as many as 65,000 legal votes based on equally flimsy theories. In both instances, the underlying strategy remains consistent: to challenge the legitimacy of votes that could potentially alter the outcome in favor of Democratic candidates. The case of Senator Bob Casey, a prominent figure in Pennsylvania politics, further illustrates the broader implications of these tactics. Although his election was ultimately decided by a narrow margin, only a few thousand votes were affected. The legal battles surrounding the counting and disqualification of ballots have far-reaching consequences. Critics argue that these maneuvers not only disrupt the electoral process, but also undermine public confidence in the fairness and accuracy of election results. Adding another layer to this complex scenario is the role played by the mainstream media. The narrative surrounding these legal disputes is often marred by a distinct asymmetry in coverage. When actions by Republicans, actions that seem designed to suppress voter turnout, make headlines, they are frequently dismissed as partisan overreach or are subject to critical scrutiny. Conversely, similar legal actions undertaken by Democrats are sometimes portrayed as minor procedural issues. This double standard not only distorts public perception, but also diminishes the accountability that is essential for maintaining a robust democratic system. The media's selective focus has significant implications for how these issues are understood by the general public. Major outlets, such as the Washington Post, have been criticized for failing to consistently highlight the systemic nature of Republican voter suppression tactics. This discrepancy in coverage, whether intentional or incidental, creates a narrative in which the actions of one political party are scrutinized far more harshly than those of the other. The result is an uneven playing field in the court of public opinion, one where the imperative to protect the integrity of the vote is overshadowed by partisan narratives. Looking ahead, the recent ruling in Pennsylvania raises critical questions about the future trajectory of electoral practices in the United States. Although this decision represents a victory for those advocating for the protection of every lawful vote, it does not signal an end to the battle. In fact, legal experts caution that the strategy of employing technicalities to disqualify mail-in ballots is likely to evolve. While the court has now deemed the specific requirement of dating the ballot envelope unconstitutional, there remains the possibility that new, equally arbitrary criteria could be introduced. For instance, Republicans may pivot to alternative measures, such as mandating the inclusion of additional identifying information or altering the process by which ballots are submitted and validated. The underlying objective, however, would remain unchanged: to create procedural hurdles that disproportionately affect Democratic voters. This ongoing cat-and-mouse game underscores the urgency of constant vigilance by both legal experts and civic activists alike. The implications of these developments extend far beyond the confines of any single legal case. They speak to a broader struggle for electoral integrity, a struggle that is as much about the fundamental rights of citizens as it is about the mechanics of voting. In a democratic society, the right to vote is sacrosanct. Any attempt to undermine this right, no matter how subtle or technical in nature, poses a direct threat to the legitimacy of the electoral process itself. As the nation grapples with these challenges, it is imperative that legal and civic institutions remain steadfast in their commitment to ensuring that every vote is counted. The victory in Pennsylvania, while significant, is but one chapter in an ongoing narrative of resistance against voter suppression. It serves as a stark reminder that the fight for free and fair elections is continuous and that those who seek to subvert democratic principles will persist in their efforts. In conclusion, the recent ruling by the federal court in Pennsylvania represents a critical milestone in the effort to safeguard the integrity of American elections. By striking down the practice of discarding ballots due to technical dating errors, the court has reaffirmed the constitutional right of citizens to have their votes counted. Yet, as this decision makes clear, the battle against voter suppression is far from over. The strategies employed by Republican operatives, whether in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, or elsewhere, reveal a determined effort to shape electoral outcomes through legal maneuvers that undermine democratic participation. For the sake of maintaining a vibrant and inclusive democracy, it is essential that all stakeholders, legal experts, civic activists, and the media alike remain engaged in the fight against voter disenfranchisement. Only through such vigilance can we ensure that every vote is honoured and that the true will of the people prevails. As debates over the minutiae of ballot procedures continue, the enduring lesson remains. Democratic principles must guide every aspect of the electoral process, and any attempt to subvert those principles must be met with resolute opposition. This investigative report stands as both a testament to the progress achieved in Pennsylvania and a clarion call for continued commitment to electoral fairness. In these uncertain times, the work of organizations such as Democracy Docket becomes all the more vital. Their relentless pursuit of justice in the courtroom not only defends the rights of voters, but also fortifies the very foundations of our democratic system. It is a struggle that demands unwavering attention and action, a struggle that, ultimately, defines the future of American democracy.